This is probably going to be the hardest tier list that I ever have to make because it's a bunch of things that I love, and also it's going to be rough. What's up, everybody? Good to see you, and welcome back to the Nerd List channel, where we rank all things nerdy for your viewing pleasure. And today we're digging into ranking all of From Software's titles from Demon's Souls on. I understand From Software made Kingsfield and all that kind of stuff before that. I've never played them. I've never even watched them, so I can't rank those. But basically, FromSoft, as we know them here in the modern day, you could say this is a Soulsborne ranking, but we have Sekiro in here, which I don't consider technically Soulsborne, but whatever, it doesn't matter. All of FromSoft game, we're ranking them from the bottom to the top, the S tier, the cream, and then the crap. We are getting into all of this, and I'm so nervous because I love so many of these games. I've participated in the community. I've been a part of this for years now, and I've played along. I have great memories on all of them. And I also know that this community can fiercely defend the things that they love. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, I already know some of the crap I'm gonna get. It's okay, vent it. It's okay. The comments are down there. You can tell me why you disagree. Let's discuss respectfully. But without further ado, let's rank some Soulsborne, FromSoft, all of their catalog since Demon's Souls games. Starting out with the D tier, I think everyone knows where I'm going, and just get your pitchforks ready. In the D tier, I gotta put Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 is I feel like widely accepted as one of the worst games in the series, and I love it. Like this is ranking all of my imaginary game children. Don't get me wrong, I don't love Dark Souls 2. That's a lie. But like, you know, I don't hate this game. I play through it on my playthroughs when I do like serious playthroughs, all that kind of stuff. I play this game, but there's so much about this game that I just absolutely hated. I think part of it, I'm a little bit jaded from when I did a Soul Level 1 run on this game, but even before that, playing this one and looking at it compared to all the other beautiful, wonderful masterpieces on this list, Dark Souls 2 just doesn't stand up. There's the mechanics. Losing health as a punishment for dying, and I understand you can get it back, you can do a bunch of other stuff, but especially like, you know, I said I played Soul Level 1, you know, I couldn't do that. That was even worse. But losing health as maximum health as you die as a punishment, like making the game harder when you're already struggling, I feel like was a horrible mechanic. I feel like coming into this game, they heard everyone love the difficulty of Dark Souls 1, and like that was like the cream of the crop, and like Miyazaki, correct me if I'm wrong, was not involved in Dark Souls 2, which is also another reason for me to have lost some of that magic. So another just to yeet that off the cannon. But like they just heard that it was hard, and so like they just intentionally, I feel like, made this harder. Really cheap level designs, especially I hate the Iron Fortress, but like, you know, easy ways to get you killed. The weapon variety was pretty meh. On top of all of that, the boss quality was also kind of meh. There's nothing that super stands out. There's none that felt super great to fight and super lovable. If I did a top 10 list, which we may do in the future, of like all-time Soulsborne bosses or whatever, I don't think I would include any out of this game. And while it did have good notes, and while, you know, it did have some intriguing, like the story was a little bit different, it had some parallels to Dark Souls 1, it never truly intertwined. Like maybe this is just an age between the beginning and age between the end, and this is just another cycle, but it just doesn't feel at home for me in this game. It feels like it just wants to be hard. It wants to be difficult, and that's fine. Like we come here, we get good, right? We do this, but it felt like Dark Souls 2 didn't bring any spirit with it. It was just a shell, like, here, be it this hard. We're gonna sprinkle it with a bunch of bosses that don't matter, and like it's just really not fun. So for me, Dark Souls 2 is at the bottom and by itself in the D tier. Next up on our list, I have to do this one out of sheer just experience. I've never played Demon's Souls. I didn't have a PS3, and then it's hard to get a PS5, especially affording one nowadays. But I've watched through people playing Demon's Souls multiple times, probably seen the game front to back 3 times now, which I know is completely different than playing. Like, you can shame me on that one all you want. So for me, I'm gonna put Demon's Souls in the C tier, and that's not because I feel like the game is bad. I feel like it was obviously it's the prototype, and there are some cool, memorable fights in this one. For me though, because I haven't played it, I feel like I can't put it up higher because of the mechanics and getting it out there. Also, there's obviously some clunkiness to it. You know, there's some bosses that you really gotta just hope for the best with their hitboxes and stuff like that. The Blue Point remake looks amazing, and I've loved watching through it. However, like, because I don't have as much experience with it, I would put it in the C tier. I still like it more than I do Dark Souls 2 because, you know, Dark Souls 2 is just so sad. So sad. Moving on. Dark Souls 3 is in the B tier. Now listen, I understand that Dark Souls 3 was an amazing game, and the lore. I know that there's a disconnect, and like I know people say that the lore is worse off from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 3 because of what they did. I love the lore and the characters of Dark Souls 3. I love the design, the build variety, the entire feeling of like you're this, you know, we've always been this no-name, you know, we've been the chosen undead. We've been, you know, this one we're the Ashen one, right? Basically, like we needed the third string players to come in and play because the top tier dogs said, nah, we ain't playing. And you play the story where you really feel like, you know, you're hunting down each of these lords and bringing them to do their duty. So just from a story perspective, great. I love the builds, the netcode. I hate FromSoft's netcode for PvP, but it was probably at its best, in my opinion, here in Dark Souls 3. Another big key factor is I love like embering and how much it felt like a useful mechanic. I'm not saying Humanities didn't feel like a useful mechanic, but embering was a really cool addition. And obviously this is where we got a lot of the things for Elden Ring, which we'll talk about Elden Ring in a little bit, but like the weapon arts and how they worked and like making it more of that anime play style. This is basically the first generation for Elden Ring. Like this one walked so Elden Ring could run. Now that being said, compared to what's left in the list, the story really didn't sit with me as much as the other ones, and part of that could be nostalgia. The story really didn't hit as much until the Ring City DLC came out. Ring City was great, but just overall, I don't know, just something didn't click, and I wish I could quantify that, but I can't, and I want to because I love it, but I can't. And I've talked about this before on streams and stuff. I can't, for whatever reason, quantify what doesn't really click for me in Dark Souls 3. I loved it, I had a great time, and then like the combat was fantastic. It's actually has better combat than some of the games I'm going to put above it. Just something about it didn't rub me the way that other games did. So for me, I know a lot of people will place this like S tier, A tier. For me, Dark Souls 3 is in the B tier. Dark Souls 1 is A tier. I know you're like, dude, clunky, horrible netcode. You know, there was really bad hitboxes in some places. I know. But the feeling, the nostalgia, the original story that spawned a lot of what influences the later games. Dark Souls 1 will forever sit in a very special place in my heart on this list, on it just for games in general. It was my first Dark Souls title. I got into it not, you know, later down the line. I probably played Dark Souls 1 when Dark Souls 3 came out. Like I wasn't new to the series. I wasn't like OG, right? If I'm being completely openly honest, I was so scared of this game because everyone talks about how hard the Soulsborne games are, and that's something that they try to prepare you for. But this game had it all for me, man. The boss fights, the difficulty, the Souls runs back, bro, the stories with Artorias and Sif, bro, just everything about this game as I played it, it unveiled. I just wanted to do more. Heck, Blighttown. Blighttown is trash. And yes, I have played it on the original no frames mode, basically. That was awful. And there's still some things that I hate about this game. If you go check out our boss ranking on this game, you can kind of hear some of my gripes. But Dark Souls 1 and was the story that opened FromSoft for me. Getting, you know, the flame bursting to life and the lords of the flame, and then getting, you know, going with Gwen's story about keeping the flame going and all the little bits you can go in there. Solaire, praise the sun. There's so many memes, there's merch, there's icons. This is like the Souls game to me. This is literally the Souls game. I literally just ranked all the Souls games. It's the Souls game for me. Like everything else, this is not technically a Souls game. The Dark Souls 1 is super flawed, but in my brain, it's super perfect. So Dark Souls 1, it was the game that made me want to do lore videos, which I still technically have not done. So I guess I don't know what, take that as you will, but like I am so invested in the lore of that game. I love it. Dark Souls 1, to you, my love, you are the best Souls game in my heart. The named Souls games. All right, now we come down to like the 3 hardest decisions ever. I just want to slap all 3 of these in the S tier. The 3 games that are left are beautiful. They're perfect. They are just the epitome of what they set out to do. It is massively hard, but I must make a decision. I need for you, the viewer, to have a definitive answer of if you ask me my favorite. And this is gonna suck. First one I'm gonna start off with is I'm gonna slap Sekiro in the A tier. Dude, Sekiro kicked my butt from front to back until there was just this point where I got it. I will be honest, this one, the lore didn't take me as much. It had great lore. lore. It had great story. It's a great like visual game too. I didn't care that much. It was so new. The enemies were so different. The parry stance, posture mechanic, all that kind of stuff was insane. I tried to play this like a Souls game and got my stuff wrecked until I eventually realized, oh, hey, this is a whole different game. I don't mentally equate it with all the rest of the Soulsborne games because it's just so different. It's a complete venture out into the wilderness for FromSoft, in my opinion. Obviously, there was, you know, there was some similarities. There was stuff they brought over from the Souls games, but like the shinobi prosthetics, the way bosses worked, the way that health really didn't matter on bosses for most of them. Most of them was this posture and this whole new like perfect parry timing that we had to get used to. Sekiro is a masterpiece, and I honestly, there's not a game that feels like it. I know there's games that have taken on the posture mechanic. I think Jedi Fallen Order did all that kind of stuff, but legitimately nothing feels like Sekiro. You will never feel, so far there's not a game that feels like it, and I've looked for it. This game on gameplay alone was absolutely fantastic. It's hard in this list not to put it in the S tier. Like I said, I would cheat and put all 3 of these games in the S tier, the 3 that were left, but we're not that guy. And now comes down to the hardest decision of my life right now, which says a lot about how my life is going, I guess. But the hardest decision, for years, I've talked about how Bloodborne is my favorite game. Elden Ring has come along and been absolutely amazing. And I am limiting myself and putting 1 in the S tier. So for me, the final game of the A tier, the not S tier game, and this hope may change, I'm gonna put Elden Ring in the A tier. This is super hard, so I'm probably gonna talk about these 2 the most. Elden Ring in the A tier and Bloodborne in the S tier. We'll kind of have to talk about them both at the same time because it is literally like a 10 out of 10 for Bloodborne and a 9.9 for Elden Ring. Elden Ring in my mind is actually the best Souls game, except it doesn't have the word Souls in it, so I can't cheat that way. But Elden Ring is perfect Souls. It took the formula from all of these games, including Sekiro, and made the perfect closest to perfect open world game possible. It took the stance and like that kind of mechanic, like there's that hidden stance bar that you can use to stagger enemies and get your front damage off from Sekiro, but it took everything else about the other Souls games, like the Souls mechanic, the weapon variety, the leveling, the bosses, and it spread all of that out into the most perfect open world game ever. And on top of that, laid an absolutely, like, I am super invested in the story of Elden Ring right now, and it's probably the most easy to understand story that we've gotten out of a Souls game. I mean, it's still not fed you directly, but a lot more of it is. And on top of that, it's the most accessible. I feel so happy being able to tell people, hey, go play this game. Like if you want to see what Souls games are like, there's enough broken stuff you can do in this game to really have a good time. It gives so much build variety. You can literally play this game however you want. I've never done magic inside of a Souls game. All of the ones I've played, never done magic of any kind. And in this one, I did my first playthrough, which took 160 hours because I just wanted to just eat this world alive, find everything, play everything, fight everything, and I still missed stuff I found out after the fact. But on top of all of that, it took me 160 hours, and I did my first run, like my melee. I actually did dual katanas, a little bit of int with the moon veil. Yes, call me whatever you want, but I still did my melee only, no summons kind of build, all that kind of stuff. I started a second file, which I'm playing through, which is incantation magic, like intelligence-based magic. And then yesterday, I started a third playthrough. I haven't finished the second one, but I started the third one doing all dragon magic because it's different than the other magic. And there's still so many other builds, strength builds. There's so much that this game has, and it's so hard to put this as a 9.9. There is a little bit of bloat, I'll be honest. Like there's some bosses that really suck to fight. I'm looking at you, Double Watchdogs, but there's so much there's still some bloat, and there's some stuff that's really fun in some of the dungeon encounters, but like it's so easily ignored once you just leave and the world's back open. And there's so much you can find and fight, and so much good story. Elden Ring is perfect in my mind, but I had to choose a winner, and that's why I go with Bloodborne. Bloodborne is the epitome. Bloodborne is the epitome. Bloodborne is the epitome. If you look at all of these games, minus Sekiro, if you look at all the ones before this, it's that still medieval knight type deal. Sure, you can do a ton with those builds and a ton with that feel, but Bloodborne brought something completely different. We'll start with just gameplay. It was meant to be aggressive. You have your things like your strafe. When you're locked in, you're no longer dodge rolling and all that. You're strafing and like moving in for positioning. You want to move in and play aggressive. They had the rally mechanic, where when you take damage, you need to slap back and get that health back, because there was a short amount of time you could do that. Sure, it didn't have thousands of weapons like a lot of other FromSoft games. It had like, I think maybe 30 is what it comes out to, 30 some, but they were so cool and so unique because every weapon was basically 2 weapons. Your transformation weapons, and then the way that you could build your player around those weapons and build your play style was phenomenal. And that is just the gameplay. The enemies were great, super memorable gameplay, super memorable bosses. You know, Ludwig is amazing. Like some of my favorite, Lady Maria, Ludwig, some of my favorite bosses, Gehrman, anime as hell, and it is awesome. There's so much good, so much great about this game. And then like that's stripping just the gameplay. You strip that away and you get to the lore, and you have this eldritch truth, outer god, like Lovecraftian horror game built around Souls-like mechanics. And you're in this, you find yourself like most Souls games, you start off with one objective that is completely different than what your end objective ends up being. You're a guy who came and you were sick and you needed blood to heal you because of how blood works in this universe and in this story. And by the end, you realize you are locked into a war between multiple outer gods trying to kill all the others off to be the god, the only outer god kind of in play. And there's so many other themes and so many sub stories with like the first church and with the first Hunter's Workshop, and then with the church hunters after that. There's so much with Lawrence, and there's so much with Willem, and there's just so much lore in this game that is just beautiful and haunting and great. The scenery, the feels, the gothic textures. This game is phenomenal. I am falling in love very much with the Elden Ring lore, and I'm curious to see what they do with it and where it goes. But as a complete experience, I don't think you get better than Bloodborne. I think sure, it's got its problems, like the Hunter Dream. You have to go back every time you want to level up. You basically have to pause the game. You have to go somewhere. Like that's not great. Sometimes blood vials, if you're not, especially when you're new, they're kind of hard. You have to learn to farm them, all that kind of stuff. For me, this is the game. This is the king of FromSoft, where this is where they have been at their best with lore, with gameplay. I love everything that's happening with Elden Ring. I would just put it S tier if I wasn't self-imposing that. But for me, Bloodborne sits the king, and you can argue with me. That's what the comment section for is. So do you agree? Do you disagree? What would you change? Let me know down in the comments. Please keep it civil. I know how this discussion can go online. Let me know what you thought, man. Like, was I right? Was I wrong? What would edge things for you one way or another? Let me know. If you enjoyed the content today and you want to see some more lists built around your favorite movies, games, comics, and all the such, make sure you hit the subscribe button, thumbs up. That way we know you liked the video, and make sure you turn on the notification bell. That way you never miss a list when we drop it. But without further ado, please don't kill me. It's just my opinion, and I hope that you enjoyed the list today. Have a great day.